No light, Chair.
Yeah. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the meeting of the South Planning Committee. We are not expecting a fire drill today. In the event that the alarm sounding, please leave the building and gather outside at the front of the building. I am obliged to inform you that this meeting is being live streamed and recorded. But I also ask you to please ensure your mobile phones are switched off. In order to those watching and live stream know who is speaking, could members and officers introduce themselves prior to speaking? To ensure members of this committee and all points raised by public speakers are properly heard, I must advise you I will not tolerate any disruptive behaviour. This is a meeting held in public and not a public meeting, and if such behaviour takes place and persists, I will adjourn the meeting. I will now ask members of the committee and officers to introduce themselves.
Richard Hopper, County Councillor for Fleet.
Also Councillor for the Leyton Division.
Richard Lee, Councillor for Bridge North East and Astley Abbots.
Hilary Love, Councillor for Church Stretton and Craven Arms.
Councillor Nigel Lumby for Albrighton.
Rachel Conley, Bridge North West and Tasland. Caroline Bignell, Broseley.
Andy Boddington, Ludlow North.
Nick Hickman, Councillor for Vey Valley.
Graham French, Principal Planner. Yeah.
Councillor Kendrick.
Robert Tindall, Councillor for Brown Key Division.
David Evans, Councillor for Craven Arms and Church Stretton, and also chair this committee.
Gemma Lawley, Developing Highways, Shropshire Council. Sorry. Louise Evans, Principal Planning Officer.
Robin Morrison, Development Manager, South Shropshire.
Ben Parker, Senior Planning Officer. Sustainable Planning and Development Services Manager.
Adrian Seaman, Solicitor. Tim Ward, Community Officer.
Thank you. Apologies for absence. Apologies been received from Tony Parsons, and Rachel Connolly is substituting for Tony. We got the minutes of the last meeting held on September the 19th. A proposal for the minutes, please.
I'm happy to propose.
Thank you. Seconder. Thank you, Christian. All in favour? Thank you. Public questions?
No public questions, Chair.
Thank you. Disclosure for community interest, please. Anybody got any interest they got to disclose? No. Okay. Right, we move on to quarry much weather claim, please.
Thanks, Chair. Can have the first slides, please, if I just say when we're progressing. So this proposal is to infill the main quarry void occupying the southern half of Farley Quarry by engineered placement of imported inert fill materials. Ground levels will be raised in 3 phases from south to north. If we can have the phasing plan, please. It's about 2 in the next one. Can I have the next one? And again, I think. There we go. So see that we've stood on the platform at the northern end of the site, and we look down over the pond towards the 3 areas of infilling, with the first one being at the southern end, and the an intermediate one, and then the larger platform area at the south. So the 7.1 hectare site occupies the central and southern parts of the quarry, together with the access onto the A4169 Much Wenlock Road. Quarry is on the eastern edge of the Shropshire Hills OMB to the north of Much Wenlock and is designated as a regionally important geological site. An earlier 2022 planning application was refused on the basis of no identified need within the OMB, conflict with the neighbourhood plan, inadequate highway information, visual impact on the OMB, lack of detail regarding rights of way reinstatement. The current EIA application provides further information to address these matters, relates to a smaller area and no longer proposes the construction of a platform to accommodate future development. A legal agreement clause has been agreed to fund longer-term habitat management and secure formal diversion of the rights of way to improve route, and also to route vehicles from the site so that they avoid Much Wenlock and the B4380 Atcham Road. So the proposals involve recycling of imported construction, demolition and excavation waste to generate inert residues for the infilling works. A screener would separate the imported material into soil and rubble. The rubble will then be crushed to produce hardcore. Horticultural grade soil and hardcore will be exported for reuse. The non-recyclable residues, so that's for clay and soils mixed with plaster and such like, will be used to infill the void. These would be inert, clean materials. A total of 30,000 cubes of material, or 450,000 tonnes, should be needed to infill the void to the proposed levels, which involve, as we saw, a gentle valley shape leading towards the northern platform edge, where there will be a kind of drainage soak away. So the existing access onto the A4169 Wenlock Road would be improved by widening and reprofiling. We saw that it was restricted to the north where there was a bank, and that was to be cut back to concave configuration. Proposed approximately 150,000 tonnes of inert construction, demolition and excavation waste would be brought on each year. The anticipated 70% recycling rate would leave a residue of 30,000 cubes of material for infilling per year. This would be imported over a 10-year period, after which recycling operations would cease and the site would be restored to a nature conservation use. Once finished levels were formed in any area, soil-making materials would be laid to a depth of 40 centimetres. We saw on the site this morning that there are significant piles of native calcareous subsoil and spoil, which could be spread back onto the more level restoration surface in order to promote formation of ecologically valuable calcareous grassland habitat. The two rights of way traverse the void from east to west. We saw that they're pretty suicidal if we try to use them, because they're going off very steep slopes. These would be formally diverted to a more level route around the edges of the site to north and south. The operation will be strictly controlled both by planning conditions and also by conditions imposed under the environmental permitting regime administered by the Environment Agency. So Much Wenlock Town Council have objected and expressed concerns about conflict with the neighbourhood plan, HGV movements, inadequate highway information and effects on the OMB, similar to the previous refusal reasons. They had existing footpaths should be reopened. The neighbourhood parish council, Buildwas and Eden Constantine, share concerns about heavy vehicle movements on the B4380. The applicants agreed a legal routing agreement would apply to prevent use of this road except for local access and to prevent HGVs from turning towards Much Wenlock. We came through the notorious Gaskell Arms junction this morning in the minibus. So there have been 36 representations objecting, 28 of which have been made within the past week, although the application's been in for over a year. Objectors generally share the concerns of the town council, and the website will exhibit those concerns. So holding objection from ecologists has been removed following receipt of further clarification from the applicant. Conditions covering ecology and geological conservation access have been agreed. The applicant's drainage consultant responded to drainage queries by confirming there's sufficient internal soak-away capacity and that highway drainage would not be affected. There are no other objections from technical consultees, including the Environment Agency, Highway Authority, SC Trees, Conservation, Archaeology, Environmental Health, although some are recommending conditions. So the refusal reasons of the previous application, the applicant has sought to address these through submission of further information, and through removal of the proposal to use the restored infield area as a platform for future development. Instead, the area is now proposed for a biodiversity use, which aligns better with policy LL1 of the neighbourhood plan. So the phased nature and design of the development and associated landscaping proposals mean any visual effects should be minimised, and this conclusion generally supported by the applicant's visual appraisal. We had a look at the site and is fairly well contained. If we can move on, there's a couple of slides with photo montages at the end or kind of panoramics. And there's the last three ones of those. We just seen the footpath diversion route. And here's some general views of the quarry. The benefits of securing an improved restoration land use supported by a legal agreement funding mechanism are, from an officer perspective, considered sufficient to meet public good tests for major development within the OMB, having regard to the contained nature of the site, which we saw this morning. So in conclusion, proposals represent improvement on previously refused scheme and are now considered sustainable and compliant overall with the development plan, and as such they're supported by officers subject to recommended conditions and legal agreement. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Could I just ask?
Yes.
You mentioned at 2.5. We speak on. Oh, I'm so sorry. The planning application was refused on the 31st of January 2020. My memory is gone. Presumably that came to committee as it's an EIA.
In actual fact, no, that's a very good question, but it's only Schedule 1 EIAs. This is a Schedule 2 EIA.
So I'm not going bonkers.
No, not at all. And that's the officer position was aligned with the objection then of the town council. It didn't meet the necessary trigger.
Thank you.
Thank you. Right, we now have some speakers on this one. We've got Stephen Holford. If you'd like to come to the microphone, sir. And you have 3 minutes to address the committee, and you're speaking against the application. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. My name is Stephen Holford, landscape architect. I'm a chartered member of the Landscape Institute and a recognised practitioner of urban design. I object to the proposed industrial works at Farley Quarry. My family live at a neighbouring farm approximately 160 metres away, and our land abuts the ownership boundary. My family have lived here for 3 years, and we moved in after my wife's father, Tony Mathers, moved into town after 35 years of living there. We run a holiday let from the farm, which is a major contributing factor to our being able to meet the large financial outgoings associated with a small holding. We market the holiday let based on the quiet rural setting of the farm within the AOMB, and the noise of the works associated with the proposed development 6 days a week will destroy our family business, and retaining the family home will no longer be a viable option without this income. I disagree with the conclusion of the noise report. We can hear and have reported to the council the current intermittent industrial works within the quarry that have been taking place for the last 3 years, which are indeed a noise nuisance when directly compared to the quiet we're used to. In my capacity as a chartered landscape architect, I disagree with some of the assessed levels of significance given to the landscape character within the AOMB. I feel they've been undervalued, which has resulted in a downplayed reported conclusion of no significant adverse effects. The proposed development's effect is incorrectly assessed as very low in the AOMB. Landscape architects consider an assessment of very low to describe a very small scale change. Landscape characteristics and character become unaffected. The AOMB partnership describes one of the special qualities as a haven of tranquility, peace and quiet with relatively low levels of noise and inappropriate development, which create an unspoilt quality that is greatly valued throughout the area. The proposed development would increase levels of noise, increase inappropriate development and affect the quality of the area significantly. I would professionally assess the proposal as having substantial adverse effect, demonstrating significant adverse effects on landscape character. Regarding biodiversity net gain, BNG is a requirement for all development barring small sites and exemptions from January 24 and is currently widely used already. I would argue that BNG provision is not a justification for approval as much as it is a standard design requirement. There are precedents for better solutions that will increase biodiversity without resorting to localised industrial works, such as we have at Streatham Westwood Nature Reserve just outside Much Landlock. Many local residents and neighbouring properties have only in the last week become aware of the proposal. New objections have just come in, including learned statements from town planners, a waste manager and immediate neighbours emphasising the negative aspects of the proposal and their concerns about how residents were not informed. I request that these educated views are not ignored. And in conclusion, I believe that this is a very cynical commercial proposition with little regard for its surroundings, the people in the area and visitors to our AONB. And I request that it should be refused. I am happy to answer any questions, should you have them.
Any questions, please? Mr. Hall? No? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I now call Councillor William Benbow. And you're representing Manchester Benlock Town Council and you're speaking against the application.
Yes.
And you have 3 minutes, please, sir.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm William Benbow, a member of Much Wenlock Town Council. We have already submitted written representations and trust that these can be taken as read. We make the following further points. The officer's updated report acknowledges that Neighbourhood Plan Policy LL2 does not support commercial uses and that the recycling plant would be contrary to that. The defence given is the temporary nature. Any passenger on the Clapham Omnibus would agree that temporary is not 10 years. The report notes the plan supports the proposal to enhance wildlife, suggesting a 20% gain. This is also used to justify the development being permitted in the AONB. However, the reports by the applicant state the gain is only 11.28%, not 20%, a figure which feels marginal at best and with no guarantees on the outcome. Even if certain, it is not commensurate with the negative impact on local residents. And as the site continues to mature, similar gains would surely be made with no intervention. The applicant also justifies development in the AONB to facilitate public access, notwithstanding the fact that the public already have the right to access the site. The case officer has gone on record following a 2014 site visit that restoration could be completed using existing spoil on site and improvements to footpaths could be made as part of such a process. In addition, Shropshire Council has the power to improve and enhance the surface of footpaths and has powers under the Planning and Highways Acts to seek alterations to existing routes. Recent comments from the Highways team suggest that alternative arrangements were already in train in any event. The exceptional circumstances cited by the case officer are also tenuous, citing difficulties with steep slopes and unstable rock faces, making management difficult. These are anything but exceptional following a long period of mineral extraction. If it is no longer the case that there is sufficient material on site to complete the restoration, it should not be local residents who should have to pay the price for the previous commercial operators and owners' failure to make necessary provision for future management. The officer's report confirms that there is no exceptional case for the waste recycling operation, instead stating that it facilitates the filling operation, suggesting that the filling cannot happen without the waste recycling, which is patently untrue. The site could be filled with inert waste from any location. In doing so, the amount of traffic to the site reduces by 70% and removes many of the objections based around noise, dust and visual impact. There is no justification to allow the recycling and thus the AONB test is not reached. Further justifications are made based on improvements to the local economy while failing to recognise the negative impact the development would have on the visitor economy, which is the leading employer in the parish and relies in part on the tranquillity and setting of the AONB. This application fails to adhere to the policies of the neighbourhood plan and does not meet the required thresholds to be cited wholly within the AONB.
Thank you. Any questions, please? Councillor Tyndall.
Yes, sorry, could I just ask you, you mentioned about, well, not very long ago that the, sorry, you mentioned towards the end of your piece that there's something about you could fill it up with something.
Yes, well,
Quite
recycling of material happens on various locations. It isn't unique to this particular site. There are lots of waste recycling plants, and if permission, for instance, were given to fill this site with inert waste, there would still be a substantial gate fee that would be receivable from the site owner to take that waste. And there's plenty of waste looking for a home in that regard. So it doesn't need to originate from that site.
But as I understand it, that which has to be recycled will be brought in under this proposed scheme.
Exactly. It's marrying the two together. It's bringing recycling and fill together. The case officer said that there is no justification for recycling in his report, and fails to acknowledge that inert waste can be brought in from other waste recycling centres.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. We now have a statement from the local member, which is Dan Thomas, and I'll ask you to show solicitor to read it out, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I speak not only as a local member, but also as a Muchwenlock Town Councillor, lifelong resident of the town, and I drive past this site daily on my way to and from work. On the 6th of March 2023, Muchwenlock Town Council submitted a detailed highways objection to this application. We have had no response from either the applicant or the highways department. Therefore, our original March 2023 objections still stand, and they have been included in the committee report at section 4, 1B. The overriding concern is the increased number of heavy vehicles from the quarry and the impact these vehicles will have on the users of the road and residents along the A4169. The HGV traffic flows quoted in the application are based on 24-hour traffic counts, but the quarry operation will only be for 10.5 hours. This makes comparisons very misleading. However, in any event, the increased HGV flow on the A4169 will be between 59 and 69%. An increase that I'm sure you will agree can only be described as significant. You will have read in the committee reports about the concerns of local parish and town councils over the accumulative traffic effects of all the local development proposals impacting on the A4169. The applicant's response to these concerns seemed to claim that the traffic on the road will increase by so much from other developments that no one will notice another 100 HGVs per day from Farley Quarry. Of course, they will be noticed. There is even talk now of making the A4169 a haul road between the Ironbridge Power Station development and Farley Quarry, with HGVs travelling back and forth all day between the two sites. It's a very alarming development and will surely lead to more than 100 HGVs per day. The applicant also concludes that the proposed new Billsbus roundabout will have sufficient capacity to accommodate all development traffic, including the 100 HGVs from Farley Quarry. I don't know how true this is, but I do know that significant safety concerns over this roundabout were raised during the power station planning application process. I also know that there is no mention of the complete lack of spare capacity at the Gaskell corner in Muchwenlock. The people of Muchwenlock had to fight tooth and nail to persuade the power station developer to properly address the issue at this junction. We cannot put this at risk. We must ensure that no traffic at all is allowed through Muchwenlock. Another area where the additional 100 HGVs will certainly be noticed is when they are holding up traffic whilst waiting to turn right into the quarry. The applicant has gone to extreme lengths to justify the proposed access arrangements, even at some stage referring to the G-force deceleration. To me, this only represents the applicant's view on the safety of the junction should be challenged. The applicant's original claim that there had been no accidents causing injury in the vicinity of the junction was immediately challenged and a very serious accident identified. The applicant's response that it did not involve an HGV and was therefore presumably not relevant is simply not good enough, and is one reason why we believe that a fully independent highway safety audit should be carried out on the proposed junction before planning permission is granted. Using swept path analysis, the applicant demonstrates the largest HGVs can successfully negotiate the revised quarry access arrangement to and from the north. This is only half the story. The people of Muchwenlock would also expect to see an analysis that demonstrates that HGVs are unable to turn into or out of the site from Muchwenlock direction. The application is simply too silent on the details of how it proposes to prevent HGVs travelling to and from Muchwenlock. Routing agreements are commonplace, and applications should be emphatic on this subject if they expect to receive local support. In the March 2023 objection, the Town Council listed typical examples of how to enforce routing agreements. None of these have been taken up. I am not happy members to leave such an important matter to a post-consent negotiation, be it planning condition or section 106 agreement. All this should have been agreed before consent is considered. This is an applicant who believes, quote, there is no reason to conclude restrictions to prevent the use of the B4380, i.e. through Billsbus and Leighton, are necessary in this case. I do not want to have to rely on the applicant advising customers not to travel through Muchwenlock. Due to the lack of satisfactory detail of the junction operational routing agreement, I believe that the application does not satisfy MPPF paragraph 108B, which requires that safe and suitable access to the site can be achieved for all users. I also believe that an additional 100 HGV during a limited period of the day, representing a possible increase of 69%, can only be described as significant, and I urge you to emphatically refuse this application. Thank you. Dan Thomas, Shropshire Councillor for Much Funlock.
Thank you, this. And now got the agent to speak, Mr. Chris Ballard, please. And you have 3 minutes to address the committee. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Good afternoon, councillors. I need to note that although the applicant for this site is Jim Cannon, it's been purchased and will be operated by Cartwright's Waste Disposal Limited, who are based in Telford. Your officer's report provides a very comprehensive overview of the proposed development, which will restore a major part of the quarry. It will also provide a much needed treatment facility for inert materials consisting of soils, hardcore, concrete, etc. And the restoration scheme guarantees a significant biodiversity enhancement for what is presently an unrestored quarry, largely bare ground, and could be considered a blight on the AONB. I do find it surprising that anybody would suggest that the landscape impact would be significant, because you can't see into the quarry from outside it. I think there's one viewpoint from the valley opposite, which is over a mile away, and that's the only place where you can actually see into the quarry. So operations in the quarry are largely invisible in terms of the wider landscape. The vegetation that you saw this morning has been developing for the 30 to 40 years since the quarry was last worked. It hasn't developed very much, mainly because of the unstable surfaces, erosion, because the surfaces are loose, and that's rainfall erosion. So any vegetation that does get established gets disturbed and its growth is stunted. So perhaps in another 60 years time, you might have double the number of trees and vegetation in there, but it will still be largely bare ground because of the problems that vegetation has in establishing itself. It's understandable that town and parish councils are concerned about HGV movements on the A169. The applicant has said everything will go north up to the Buildwas junction and then on to the Iron Bridge bypass and the Telford bypass, so no other local roads will be used. And the waste materials that will come here are already on your local roads, but they're not new wastes that have been generated by the applicant. They're already going to various facilities and disposal sites. And one of the problems is that there aren't many in the locality, and Cartwrights presently have threat to Cannock. So a local solution is a much better solution for this sort of waste. And I've run out of time, so thank you for listening to me.
Any questions, please, for the agent? No? Okay. Graham.
Yeah, if I can just clarify some points which were raised earlier. The difference between the 11% biodiversity net gain and the 22% comes from the fact that the earlier estimate has been superseded by a more detailed biodiversity metric, which you've requested by the ecologist. So the figure is just over 22% biodiversity net gain, but that will be secured in terms of longer term habitat management through the escrow funding that's referred to in the report. The second element, there is a requirement under the Environment Agency's permitting process that all inert materials, there should be consideration to recycling and reclamation first. Now, it has been stated that materials could be recycled at site, And that's certainly the case that with some of the larger sites, there are on-screen on-site screening and crushing facilities. However, there is still a very substantial amount of material where it isn't possible for amenity reasons or space reasons to put the screener and the crusher on the site. And so you have an admixed material which comprises bits of soil and hardcore and demolition rubble. And it's that sort of material which would come to this site. So it's indicated that you can source material that is already discarded, and at the end of its, there's no more scope for recycling. But the key point is that there is an Environment Agency requirement to recycle before you landfill, and a significant portion of the inert waste arising within the sub-region is admixed and is not suitable for segregation at source. So this is what this scheme seeks to have. A final point in terms of enforcement of vehicle routing. And obviously we have Gemma here, Gemma Lawley, and I hope to be able to pass over to her, if I may, for further clarification. But I just want to add initially that the legal agreement section 106 mechanism is a well-tried and tested and trodden route for the control of vehicle movements, and there are various mechanisms which support that. One of them which can include the erection of CCTV at the site entrance. Well, we saw there's already CCTV and it's quite secure, but we could capture the views to prevent vehicles turning right towards Much Wenlock. But there is a what's called 3 strikes and you're out situation, where if there is a persistent offender, then on the third attempt, the third evidence of offence, that the access to the site is banned for that particular driver. So there's a very strong incentive for drivers to conform with this. Now that can be tested because Cartwright's livery wagons can be traced and registration numbers can be checked both in Buildwas, Atcham and at the Gaskell Arms junction to confirm that the routing restriction is being adhered to. So it is a viable mechanism, but if I may, I'll just refer you quickly to Gemma to provide some further clarity.
Yeah, so just to follow on from Graham's comments, so from a highways perspective, we would be looking for a formal section 106 agreement and a routing agreement, and the idea behind this would be to effectively mirror the restrictions that are in place on the Iron Bridge Power Station developments in terms of routing to prevent vehicles going through the Gaskell Arms junction and Much Wenlock itself, and also to avoid the B43 the build B436 yes, the build effectively Buildwas and Leighton routing, which again as part of the Iron Bridge Power Station development was a key issue. So from a highways perspective, we're extremely keen to see that in place, and also the monitoring, and the two developments hopefully will run together in terms of the restrictions, so it will be clear and transparent about the vehicle movements to be generated.
Thank you, Gemma. Hope you would like to go first.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to come to you. I'm quite concerned about I know that you've analysed it, but could you just explain how the network, the road network, with an extra 100 lorries going on there daily? I mean, are they actually physically able to? Are they going to get loads of wear and tear and potholes, and how are they going to be kept maintained? I mean, that's an awful lot of extra vehicles on that stretch of road, and how would that work? If that makes sense. I mean, yeah, it seems like an awful lot of extra vehicles going up and down there.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely fine. So in terms of the assessment, we have undertaken a robust assessment, and as part of the application, the transport assessment was submitted, and then we've gone through various different rounds. So taking on board some of the comments from Much Rannoch Town Council as well, and some of the objections that they'd raised to ensure that all matters have been addressed. So in terms of the vehicle movements along the A4169, effectively around 6,300 vehicles a day. So within the transport assessment, what they've done is they've applied a growth factor to that as well, to look at the future growth and number of vehicle movements, and then looked at also the existing percentage of HGVs in comparison to what this development would generate. And I think the other thing to point out really is that whilst there will be the HGV movements, they won't all be within the peak hour period. They will be split across the day. So effectively, the movements will be sort of spread. So when you look at the number of vehicle movements already along the A4169, and then taking into account the Ironbridge Power Station development and the number of movements that will be generated by that, as a highway authority, we've come to the conclusion that, subject to a region agreement, junction improvements, then it would be acceptable in terms of the number of movements that we would be looking at. And obviously, as a highway authority, we've got a duty to maintain the 4169 to its use. And as an A road, it already carries a certain percentage of HGVs, which is around 3% at the moment. So, but I'm happy to take any further questions if you've got any queries. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Bollington, please.
Thank you, Chair. Excuse me. I'm uncomfortable with this application, but I see the need. I see the need for the processing. The problem is the location, really. And that's really the difficult bit. That if you wanted to do that sort of thing, you really wouldn't put it here. Although we have assessments saying the roads can cope, well, frankly, when I go through there, I get the impression the roads actually can't cope now. And it is very difficult, particularly at the Gascon Arms. And there is a lot of pressure on those, and it's very poor for residents. There's a very poor environment for residents as well. And okay, 100 lorries a day, whether that's a lot or not a lot depends upon your perspective. But even so, it's more on a system that really, I mean, to a layman, seems to be rather full. And I am concerned about the principle. I mean, I sort of see why stuff's moving around, but the principle ought to be that anything coming, well, there should be nothing coming off a site unless it's a material that's in a fit state to be reused, or it's material that can go straight into landfill. I mean, zero waste construction. Now, for stuff to be carrying off Ironbridge is ridiculous given the size of the site. There is more than enough space there to do all the processing that's necessary on the site. I mean, it's absolutely vast. And so I did think that I'd like to see material, except material that then cannot be landfilled on Ironbridge, you know, residual soil, etc., residual rock material that cannot be that can't be done on deposited on the Ironbridge Buildwas site. Then that, okay, fair enough, could go into landfill somewhere. But I think we've sort of got the system wrong where we're moving around far too much. And I'd be reluctant to approve anything which encourages that, because I think that's against current trends in construction and current trends in protecting the environment. And I don't think it's very good for the residents either.
Okay. Councillor Lundby, please.
Started from the base of the 4 objections from last year, and I think the officer's report has gone through them and all the things that have been put through. I'm a lot more comfortable than I was. I accept the AONB issue, It's interesting now the 10 years is not seen as temporary when this committee and other committees are having to adjudicate on solar panel farms that are 40 years and they're called temporary. What this actually provides is 10 years and then that's it. Nothing else will be done for it. It will be put back to a nice state. So in that sense, I think that is a benefit for the AONB in the longer term. I think the better lorry routing with the legal side and the CCTV systems will be of a benefit. I get what Councillor Boddington's saying. However, if we can cut down miles by taking it locally rather than all the way to Cannock is an advantage. The public footpaths looks as though that will be sorted because at the moment it's not at all. And we've sorted the inefficient highways plan. So I'm at the moment of a view to support this.
Thank you. Councillor Potter, please.
My questions are just looking at the objectives by Much Wenlock Town Council and the weight that should be given to the Much Wenlock neighbourhood plan. So they've stated that it's contrary to policies LL1, LL2. And I look at the more general policies around SAMDEV, MD12, MD17 and core strategy policies. So how much weight are we meant to give to a neighbourhood plan? Because my understanding is that a neighbourhood plan which Much Wenlock has, I think they were one of the first to have a neighbourhood plan. So I presume it's up to date and it's, you know, it should be given weight within planning terms. So I just want a bit of a clarification on what sort of weight should be given to that.
Yeah, the neighbourhood plan forms an adopted part of the development plan, and the policies are equally important as the core strategy and the SAMDEV plan, though at a local level. But I think that within that, there is a kind of well-established sort of position that sometimes some policies pull in opposite directions, and that there is this concept that if there is one policy that may not be fully complied with in a particular development scheme, then that isn't the end game, as it were. You have to look at the totality of the policies and make a decision on the development plan as a whole. Now, in this particular case, we have two significant policies in the neighbourhood plan, both of which have significant weight. There's LL1, which requires that quarry sites should be subject to a quality restoration and supports that. And there's LL2, which precludes the principle of commercial development at Farley and a couple of other quarry sites. There are other policies that sit outside that in the SAMDEV plan, and also we've got CS20 in the core strategy, and MD17, which is the mineral restoration and control policy in the SAMDEV. And there is an overriding imperative which is supported at national level to secure sustainable restoration to quarry sites. Now, I think that some members who were at the site visit this morning will have seen that there were unstable slopes, and they will have seen that there is a scenario under this scheme whereby a sustainable restoration could be achieved, but there are costs involved in that in terms of the concerns about the vehicle movements. So my response is that these are material, they are relevant to the decision making, but they must be seen in the wider context of the development plan as a whole. And the development plan as a whole supports sustainable rehabilitation, restatement of quarry sites, and this scheme seeks to establish that.
So just following on from that, so quarry restoration, I get the impression that it would be less intrusive if that quarry was then infilled with already pre-processed material, and that the processing wasn't conducted on site. And that's probably what would be more acceptable to the local community. It would probably reduce the number of traffic movements because it would just be processed material coming in. There wouldn't be material coming in, being processed, and then going out to various other sites. So from a sustainability point of view, I suppose my argument would be that, yes, you know, restore the quarry, infill it, but does the processing need to happen on site, because that is having such a big impact within the local community. I think the cumulative impact we shouldn't ignore along that road, particularly with Iron Bridge, sand and gravel extraction. I think there was a caravan or leisure facility going on. You know, it's a significant amount in an area that has been relatively untouched for, was it the quarry hasn't been used for 40 years, something like that?
Sure. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that the 70%, 30% is probably a worst case, because I think that it is true to say that the quarry is near to the Iron Bridge site, and the Iron Bridge site is sufficiently large to undertake its own on-site processing. But I think we cannot conclude that there is an automatic link that this site would capture materials from the Iron Bridge site that are surplus to requirement. But I think that we could, if members are particularly concerned about this issue of 70-30, we could identify a supplementary condition that sought to actually increase the amount of end final waste and reduce the amount of recycling in the scheme. I think that may be acceptable in principle to the applicant if the applicant is able to secure end of waste pre-processed materials, residual waste suitable for landfilling, then that would result in a reduction in the total amount of material that comes to the site. But I think we have to also recognise fundamentally that there is not an objection from the Highway Authority. And if I could just read out NPPF 111, which is oft quoted, and it says development should only be prevented or refused on highway grounds if there would be an unacceptable impact on highway safety or the residual cumulative impacts on the road network would be severe. Now, I don't think from Gemma's advice that we're at that situation. So I think we could ask that if the applicant was willing to agree a supplementary condition which sought to reduce the proportion of recyclable to end-of-life material suitable for landfilling. And I think that that's something that if members wish to add that as a supplementary condition, then we could offer that up potentially. But beyond that, we have to recognise that there is not a highway objection at the moment. Gemma.
Just thought it may be useful just to provide a bit of clarification with regard to the calculation on vehicle movements. So the infill would, so out of the 110 movements, 100 HGVs, 58 would be the infill and 40 would be recycling, and that's what's been put within a transport assessment. Deliveries 2 movements and staff 10. So in terms of the breakdown, it's less than the kind of 50%, but it does, the recycling element does contribute to the number of vehicle movements overall, particularly HGVs. So.
Councillor Higgins, please.
Thank you, Chair. I welcome the improved access, especially if there were going to be up to 100 lorries per day and the altered rights of way. I do understand the AONB needs peace and tranquility. We're looking here at a quarry site that has had no commercial use for, I think it's over 50 years, isn't it? And this site, from what I looked at on the site visit this morning, is not going to improve if it's just left to nature to try and do its job. And I'm talking about the reasons such as the erosion on the steep slopes, the type of material that is there. I'm not a geological expert. But you can see already that parts of those slopes are starting to degrade and slide further back down into the quarry. I see this as an opportunity to improve a disused site with materials from development in the local area, say local within perhaps 50 miles. And I presume the reason they put this forward in this way is because of the economic viability of trying to screen materials there so that they can use the unusable portion of that screening for infill in the quarry. I know it's very difficult to make a decision on sites like these because it's obviously not going to please the local population to have this brought back into what is a semi-commercial use. And I know LL2 says no commercial use for this quarry. There is obviously an element of commercial use in this, but if you look at the end result, you get a plot of land which, although it's not seen from the highway, would actually be in a much better improved condition. And I'm not sure that leaving this quarry site as it is would actually achieve any extra benefits to wildlife or biodiversity over a very long period of time. So in that respect, I'm sort of sitting on the fence, but I'm minded to go towards approval for this if it improves the area in the long term.
Thank you, Councillor Nick. Councillor Tyndall, please.
I don't deliberately want to be a maverick on this, but my view, particularly as it is in the A and B, is why bother? Just leave it. I mean, it's been like that for a long time. The only area of the existing quarry that I would have concerns about is I'm not quite sure what it is. Is it overburden that's been stripped, which has been put to rest at a very steep angle. So you've got these, not many, but quite a number of eroded gullies. But I wouldn't have expected anything else if you put overburden, that's topsoil and maybe subsoil, that overlaid the actual Silurian limestone. I wouldn't expect anything else. And the rest of the quarry, and there are many quarries that are fascinating geologically, there will be biodiversity in that quarry, I am sure. I'm no expert. But from my own point of view, it's too near much wedlock. There are highway problems. Farley Bank is notorious. It's in an A and B. And my view is that we just leave it alone. Thank you.
Thank you. Colin, do you wish to speak as you went on the site with it this morning?
Yeah, there's a couple of things. You know, you're talking about the 22% BNG. Would that be after those 10 years, or was that after we've had the additional escrow?
So the restoration would be progressive, so that there are 3 phases, and the first phase would probably be completed inside year 3, and that would immediately then become available for restoration and the provision of the calcareous grassland habitats. The southern end of the quarry, where we saw the water feature, that is a larger area within the void, and that probably take 5 years to infill. And so until the end of that filling, then the last phase of quarry restoration could not occur. So there is a phased restoration that will begin in year 3 for the sort of infilled area. But there is a proposal for a escrow account based on the pence per tonne of tipped material to generate £100,000 index linked, which would secure funding for the longer term management of the habitat interest within the sites. Now, we're not going to achieve that if we just leave the quarry as it is. We can bank the biodiversity net gain, and this is 22%. We can also add value to it by creating this calcareous grassland habitat and then protecting and managing it sustainably for the next 30 years.
Can you just go through that supplementary condition again, Graham?
Yeah, Chair, there was a suggestion that members may not be happy with the nominal 70-30 split between the quantity of restoration of inert fill material coming in for recycling and the amount of residual material that is coming, that is going to actually go in the landfill void. So my suggestion of a supplementary condition is that members, if you have delegated authority for officers to work the detailed conditions up, but they have a supplementary condition which requires submission of a scheme which seeks to increase the proportion of residual material for tipping relative to the amount of recycling within the site, in order that the proportion of vehicle movements associated with the recycling elements can be reduced, so that the concerns in relation to highways are are more, are offset.
Okay, can you go?
Can I just add to that?
Yeah.
I can see the logic of that, but why reduce the amount of material that can be recycled? Like the whole point is we're trying to increase the amount that can be recycled.
Yeah.
So I mentioned earlier that there are two different types of waste streams that could be attracted here. Primarily, this is for the types where it is not feasible to capture pre-separated materials, because if it's been previously, if the mixed material that is generated from the development of a new housing site in Telford on brownfield land is not separated at source, then it will arrive at the site as an admixture of soil, sand, clay, plaster, and other such like, and it will then need to be screened, and the larger bits will need to be crushed to produce the soil and the hardcore. However, there is a selection process involved, and there are certain, there's a lot more waste than there is capacity in this site, and an operator can exercise some discretion in choosing which sources of inert fill material to identify. And so it may be that a scheme with a condition might require the operator to source a higher proportion of material from larger sites where there is the capacity for on-site screening and crushing, so that therefore the amount of residual material is greater, and hence the amount of recycling at this site may reduce. Now, I can't say that that's something that would be a firm commitment to a certain percentage level, but it would be within the remit of the planning conditions. Given the members' concerns here, it would meet relevant tests in my advice. If a scheme requiring consideration of a reduced percentage of recyclable relative to final waste material was required.
Chairman, if I could just ask a supplementary. Are you saying, therefore, that this material will have already been sieved to some extent to remove the recyclables before it gets to the quarry?
Yeah, I think that.
I must admit, I'm getting really rather confused.
I think that obviously the ideal scenario would be, for instance, if Cartwrights were able to reach an agreement with Harworth, and they were able to take pre-processed residual waste material from the Iron Bridge site.
Yes.
But there are other sites in the Telford area.
Residual in the sense that it's been processed.
Yes, it's already been processed, and they've been able to use the hardcore for the building foundations on the Iron Bridge site, and the residue, the clays and the admixtures that aren't good for horticultural soil, can then go into this site, and then therefore ipso facto the proportion of recycled to end-of-life material is reduced. Hence, the level of vehicle movements is reduced. Yes, yeah. But alternatively, as I say, there are some larger sites in the Telford area where it may be feasible to, and indeed Western Flanks of Wolverhampton, where it may be feasible to undertake the recycling on site. And there is a degree of selection that residual material, the Cartwrights could preferentially direct that material or seek to serve that market rather than the market where the material comes in as an admixture. Now, I'm not saying that we could specify a particular percentage, but we could require a scheme to be submitted which investigates the potential for that.
Can I just say, therefore, having listened to that, and I think I understand it now, I would be much happier with this scheme if the material that comes to the quarry is put in the quarry and goes away. It's not processed in any way. So you've got empty lorries going out of the quarry. I think that's a more sustainable, and it will be up to the construction industry to decide, well, we're going to have to try and sieve some of this out before it goes out off our site. Does that make any sense? Not silence, so obviously it doesn't.
As long as you recommend it.
That seems very complicated, Graham, because I wrote down here, and I know you said not the percentage, but 5% of it pre-treated infill. It's just as simple as that, is that anything that comes to the site and a bad percentage of it will be pre-treated. That will be an incentive for the developer to actually obtain that amount of pre-treated. So it's a one-way trip with a lorry and then it goes empty.
Idris will come in here potentially, but there are various tests that have to do with the application of planning conditions, and they have to be reasonable related to the site. They can't result in a kind of disproportionate economic impact. Now, what I'm saying is that as requiring a scheme would meet those criteria. Specifying a particular percentage would be too prescriptive and would not meet those legal criteria. I think there is a degree of flexibility. It is reasonable within a kind of open market situation to expect that Cartwrights will have some choice in which materials it selects for entry to this site, and it will be able to exercise that choice to increase the relative percentage of end-of-life waste material, residual material. But beyond that, I think that we would be going too far, and we would meet we would not comply with the legal criteria covering the use of planning conditions.
Thank you. Seems to be almost contradicting itself slightly here, because it almost feels like the process could be done twice, in that it might be done somewhere else and then brought to the quarry and then done again, possibly. So there's a condition at the end, which is condition 16, to review of restoration infill rates from year 5 onwards, with provision for amended lower level restoration scheme in the event that the level of inert infilling is materially less than specified in the approved details. So, and also, just a general comment, if I may, 6.23, is the proposal justified by an exceptional circumstance? The key objective of the application is to secure a sustainable restoration. It would be difficult. I understand what you said about the 10-year being not that temporary compared to 40-year solar farm. But we've mentioned a few times here about the Iron Bridge development, and although they should be seen entirely separately, for what I can see, you're looking at 10 years plus for the residents of Much Wenlock and the surrounding area to have quite a lot of disruption. There is, I think it's noted in one of the things that the quarry would cease before the final residents have moved into the Iron Bridge. You're talking a lot of traffic. I understand about the highways, but 10 years is nothing compared to a 40-year solar farm. But on a 40-year solar farm, you don't have lorries coming backwards and forwards all the time. I think it's a lot of disruption. And I think if, as Councillor Potter said, if you could literally just fill that in without having the recycling, the waste management plan basically, which is what I consider, then I think that would be an idea. But to actually be processing stuff on site and taking a substantial amount of that away, and with those conditions that if you actually don't make enough inert waste, the restoration will be lower, that surely would then have an impact on the BNG. Thank you.
Chairman, sorry. Yeah, I can do, Chair. Thank you. I'll just echo what Graham said. If we are going to for a condition, it does need to meet test. Whilst local planning authorities do have a wide power in terms of conditions, they do. It's not an absolute power. So the tests are normally that needs to be necessary, relevant to planning, relevant to the development to be permitted, enforceable, precise, and reasonable in all of the aspects. I think I echo what Graham said in terms of if it was a condition as suggested, I think I don't know how we'd actually enforce it, but if there is a resolution to grant planning permission, you can delegate powers to development management, and then we can look at the condition to be imposed. But yeah, I think there might be some issues with enforceability.
Thank you. Councillor Tindall, please.
Yeah. Rachel Connor, are you and I saying the same thing? In that we would rather not see processing at all at the quarry, and that what comes in goes in the hole that we saw this morning. Yeah, well, that's two of us and possibly three. So,
I'm being a little cynical in that if it was about, I think they're using the BNG and the restoration potentially as a reason to have the plant.
I know that
sounds terrible. Yeah, but if it was the plant on its own, it wouldn't be accepted, would it?
Well,
and that's the trade-off.
Do we have to take into the economic viability or whatever process they want to take? If we feel or it is felt that the quarry needs to be filled in to some extent, because that's all that's going to happen really, then why not fill it in with stuff that couldn't possibly go anywhere else? That is what I think the three of us maybe will say. Because I don't think it's the right place for processing. You're near much Wedlock, you're in an A and B, you've got the road to build west. I think all that is stacked up against it. I really do. Thank you.
Welcome back to Greg.
Yeah, so I hear members' concerns in relation to vehicle movements. So I reiterate the points I made in relation to the need to demonstrate severe impacts and the fact that Gemma's not objecting. I do think that the condition would result in some potential for the reduction in vehicle movements. I also think, and I'm sort of looking at Gemma here, that the choice of vehicles used to take materials to and from the site is important. And I think that could also perhaps be something that can be further elaborated on, because a 40-ton wagon, you can take, 2 lots of a 20-ton wagon. If the larger wagons are used, then the number of impacts on the local highway is less. But also you've got, because the 40-tonners are articulated, they can take the bend around out of the sites in a safer way from a swept path perspective. So there may be some traction in considering a scheme to preferentially use larger vehicles, because again, then you're reducing vehicle movement. So there are ways and means of mitigating or providing some mitigation, but yes, ultimately it is what it is. But if we don't do anything, then the quarry will remain as it is. The steep slopes will continue to erode, and there will be an area which could have potentially developed into calcareous grassland over the next 10, 20 years or so, would remain subject to erosion and steep slopes.
Chairman, do you want a proposal?
I'd like a proposal, please, Councillor.
I would propose that we approve this application subject, and it's a big subject too, that only end-of-life material goes into the quarry. I hope that will be sufficient for those slopes to be re-landscaped to allow some form of calcareous grassland to be established. I entirely accept that they're much too steep and subject to erosion as they are at the moment. But all right, it's a compromise proposal, but one I hope that would have some merit in it. So that's my proposal.
Come back on that, Mr.
Yeah, can I just say that the committee has to determine the proposal before it, and that proposal involves as an integral part the recycling of material as well as the use of end-of-life materials to infill the void. There has to be an element of that in here. What I'm suggesting is a kind of nuanced approach with a condition which seeks to investigate options for reducing the amount of recycling relative to end-of-life tipping. And I've also suggested the use of larger wagons will reduce the level of vehicle movements. Now, those are things that are permissible in terms of conditioning for this scheme. But we cannot impose a condition which is against the core principle of recycling, which forms a key element of this application, I'm afraid.
Well, I'm going to have to propose that we reject this application, because we're not allowed, according to Graham, I can understand why, but I don't agree with it. We're not permitted to say you can only bring in end-of-life material to go in the quarry hole and nothing else.
We'll come back here just for.
Yeah, could you just clarify the reasons for the use of the one, please?
Yes, I can. I mean, they are ones that have already been discussed. The first thing is its proximity to the town, the medieval market town of Much Wenlock. It's within an area of outstanding natural beauty, which I think presupposes any form of large-scale processing. And thirdly, the impact on local highways. I'm very happy if anybody else is going to support me on this to fine-tune the reasons.
That's a proposal. Go a second, please.
I would second that, and I agree with the reasons.
You wish to add anything, Councillor Policy?
No.
No. Councillor, no.
Could we add that it's in conflict with the neighbourhood plan?
Yeah, sorry, yes. Very, very good point, and it's escaped me, but it is perhaps one of the most important points. I know we've been told that various policy plans do pull apart, but this one is so close to Much Wenlock that I really do feel that the Much Wenlock plan must take important precedence. Thank you for pointing that out.
You're saying contrary to the Much Wenlock plan.
Yes.
Yeah, the neighbourhood plan.
Neighbourhood plan, I think.
That's Councillor Wilson. That's good. That's second.
Yeah, I think the highway reason I would strongly recommend that is removed because it isn't supported by the highway authority, and we would struggle to defend that on appeal. But it's up to members ultimately.
Yeah, I would just echo Graham's comments on that. Without an objection from highways, do we still want to proceed with the refusal on highways grounds?
Councillor Tyndall.
That's my second. Sorry.
I mean, I appreciate the reasons it's against highways advice, but we're going against officers' advice for the whole thing. And I would prefer to leave it in because I think it is really very important for understanding the impact that this development will have on the community.
I think the difference is with the other reasons you're referring back to the local plan, but you haven't actually got the highways reason with highways officer support. So that's where I'm struggling with the highways one.
In the highways, I think.
I'd take the highway one now.
Thank you, guys.
Okay.
Okay, we'll remove that one on the highways.
Okay.
So it's me using the wrong we. I mean, I haven't won this battle yet.
Right, we're going to propose for refusal of the application on the reasons stated. We're going to propose on the seconder for that with industry.
Yeah.
If you can just read out the reasons, then we can take the vote.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. We have a proposal which has been seconded to refuse planning permission, contrary to officer's recommendation, on the grounds that proximity to Much Wenlock, not in accordance with the neighbourhood plan, and the impact on the A on B. I'll read out the names. Could you please confirm whether you're for or against the proposal?
Proposal to refuse.
Yes. Caroline Bagnall.
For.
Andy Buddington.
For.
Rachel Connolly.
For.
Richard Huffer.
For.
Nick Hignett.
Against.
Christian Lee. For. Hilary Lough.
For.
Nigel Lumbey.
Against.
Ed Potter.
For.
Robert Tyndall. For. David Evans.
Against. That is carried for refusal.
Yeah.
That's carried for refusal. Thank you.
Chairman, can I make my usual request?
You ready to compensate Councillor Tyndall for 5 minutes?
Yes, please.
Okay.
5 minutes should do it.
Yeah, okay. Anybody want to compensate for 5 minutes?
Legal advice on that. Exactly. That way we can centrally verify when I'm appropriate. Yes.
Thank you. Right, item number 6 is a Ludlow Touring and Holiday Home Park at Overton Road. District.
Yes, so the application relates to the change of use of agricultural land for the extension of an existing carriage park to accommodate 61 additional static units. The scheme also includes engineering operations to facilitate a new internal access road and pitches. The site is denoted, quite small on there, denoted by a yellow star in the centre of the satellite imagery. You will note that the site is located at the south of the market town of Ludlow and due east of the small village of Overton. The application site occupies agricultural land and includes a new vehicular access route which passes through existing amenity land. At the closest points, the River Team and the A49 run to the east of the site beyond the existing caravan site. The River Team is a designated SSI at this location. The site is accessed by the B4361, which runs along the western boundary of the site and provides access to Ludlow and to the A49. Next slide, please. This is the location plan with the application site area detailed by the red boundary line. This plan, if you can see it quite closely, that this plan usually shows the contours of the land, which rises steeply in places, generally to the northwest of the site. Just take that in. Next slide, please. This is the proposed site plan showing some of the detail of the scheme. Members will be able to see the solid orange line denotes the Severn Trent easement. Severn Trent have been consulted on this planning application, but no response has been received. Members will also be able to note the proposed alignment of the internal roads and the siting positions of the individual static caravans. I'll move on to matters of landscape and visual impact a little later, but the dashed orange line denotes phase 1 and phase 2 of the development, so it's run through the centre there. Phase 1 would include all the engineering operations and the siting of caravans on the eastern part of the site, together with the proposed landscaping across the entirety of the site. Phase 2 would then be undertaken 3 years later and will provide caravans on the western part of the site. This will enable the landscaping scheme to establish and to provide a visual mitigation for the development. This can be controlled by a planning commission should members consider it necessary. One matter that has come to my attention quite late in the day is that I note that the final version of the committee report has not included such a condition. But for members to be aware that that condition was agreed with the applicants regarding this matter, and should members be minded to grant approval for the scheme, I ask that officers are given delegated authority to attach this condition, so a phasing condition to allow phasing to ensure that the landscaping on is undertaken, and then the siting of the caravans happens 3 years later down the line. Next slide, please. Yes, so now we've got some sections of the development. So sorry, they're quite small on here, but it does give you obviously a bit more of an understanding. So we've got a number of sections with the application and along with plans that show the site levels so that we can ensure that development is undertaken in accordance with the submitted details. Next slide, please. So this again is the cut and fill sections. So there is a certain amount of cut and fill to enable the development. Ground is generally being stripped from the highest points within the field and on the north and west of the site and relocated to the east to provide suitable levels for the internal access road. Next slide. Again, more sections. The application was also accompanied by cut and fill calculations for the engineering operations, which detail that it will be necessary for the majority of the material to remain on site and will be used within the proposed development. So you can see from the amount of cut and fill on both of those. Next slide, please. This is an extract from the proposed landscaping plan. As noted within the agricultural impact assessment and the ecology report, there's no requirement for any tree or hedgerow removals within the development, other than the formation of a small gap for the pedestrian route in an existing scrubby gap. The largest area of planting is within the centre of the site. This area also forms the division between phase 1 and phase 2 of the development. The planting will provide screenings and softening and general filtering of the lodges in phase 1 when viewed from the west, and for phase 2 when viewed from the east. Smaller clusters of planting are situated where the potential for greater visibility from the site receptors was identified. It consists of interlocking groups of native species of light standards, generally 6 to 8 centimetres in girth. A mixed species hedgerow is also to be planted along the western edge of the pedestrian access route. It will provide screening of the access, but will also form an additional corridor connecting two existing hedgerows. 2 areas of mass planting of smaller widths are also included on the eastern and southern sections of the site. These are in areas where the planting of larger trees would not bring any additional screening or landscape benefit due to site topography. They would establish into more significant blocks of tree cover in the medium to longer term, say over 10 to 20 years. Lead us to the next slide. Again, we've got some more sections here, but these detail the impact of the development. So the top one is at the date of construction or the implementation of phase 1, and then 15 years post construction. So you can see the full development and obviously the impact of the trees having grown will have had over the longer term. Slide. So this is the constraints map. You'll be able to note the locations of some public rights of way. Sorry, I sort of denoted the actual application site area, but it's sorry, I'll come. It's sort of in the centre of the site. So you can see sort of 2 brown blobs which denote the mineral safeguarding area. So these are 2 areas of sand and gravel deposits. And again, we've got a mineral resource assessment, which includes the purity of those deposits and the volume of the possible mineral resources such that it's not regarded to be a viable mineral resource for extraction. So it's included that the mineral resource is not needlessly being sterilised by the proposed development. It's accepted that the resource is not of economic value. So it said, yeah, it's just where the cursor was just then is the application site. But you can also see the locations of listed buildings in the vicinity as well as the public rights of way. But you'll note from the officer's report there's also potential for archaeological remains within the site. Again, this is going to be controlled by conditions, so further information will be submitted in that respect. And matters in relation to ecology, trees, highway safety, these have also been supported by appropriate reports to inform decision making, and no objections were raised in these regards. Next slide, please. So I've included some photographs from the landscape and visual impact assessment that was submitted to support the application, just to assist your understanding of some of those visual impacts. So yes, because they generally obviously show the site exactly on there. So this viewpoint is yeah. It's not quite the viewpoint that I was anticipating. So yeah, can we move on? Sorry, one. Yeah, so I'll go on to. We'll go. Yeah, so this is taken from a footpath to the east of the site, between River Team and the A49, as we weren't able to see that on our site visit today. But again, this is like in an elevated location above the site, and it means that it will be partially visible, but only for a short section of that right of way. So before and after this location, views of the site are generally obscured by fjord stock. Next slide, please. Yeah, so this is looking to the west to the west and southwest of the site, off a footpath that comes off Overton Road. So for the members that were on the site visit today, it's a little bit further down from where the bus actually turned around. As I said, obviously we stopped next to those dwellings. As I said, obviously if you continue down that path, this is obviously the viewpoint that you would obtain. So again, at the limited section of this footpath, there are views of the site, but they are filtered by existing vegetation. So with regards to those dwellings, again, they're obviously located along the footpath, and they do obscure the site from the footpath. But regarding their own the dwellings themselves, in planning terms, they don't have the right to a view from those properties. But that being said, just in this instance, they would be. There is a high level of existing vegetation between those dwellings and the site in the most part. So, next slide, please. Yes, so from a visual impact perspective, effects are generally localised to within a kilometre of the site. This image has been included as the only viewpoint from further afield and is taken from a footpath climbing Jack Common, about 2.8 kilometres from the site in Morris Forest. So you can just understand that impact from a wider landscape perspective. I remind members that the submitted LVIA concludes that the proposed development would have a limited and localised visual impacts, and officers have concluded that the caravans will have a low profile with environmental colours, so that together with the undulating topography and the existing proposed greening or landscape, the proposed development is unlikely to have any significant effect on the character and appearance of the landscape from visual receptors. So overall then, we generally have officers consider that the development is acceptable in principle in accordance with our development plan and can be suitably controlled with planning conditions on the elements that are fundamental to the scheme. Whilst the proposal will be visible in the landscape, the visual impact of the development can be mitigated with the proposed landscaping and phasing of the scheme, and these harms are not considered to outweigh the benefit of development to the local economy. For the reasons set out in the officer's report, the scheme is supported by officers and is recommended for approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Lee. Okay. We have some speakers on this, and we also have a statement from Richard's Council Parish Council, which I'll ask you to our solicitor to read out, please.
Thank you, Chair. Richards Castle PC objects to the planning application due to visual impact and overdevelopment. Before being granted planning permission in 2011 for 137 pitch touring caravan park, Morris Leisure engaged extensively with the PC and committed to have no statics. The PC supported the development because of projected substantial tourist spending in the local economy, supported jobs in the community. In 2015, to the dismay of the PC, permission was granted to convert 38 pitches to statistics, leaving 99 touring spaces. There was no more direct engagement with the parish council. The parish council objected, highlighted harm to the character of the landscape and concern about the increased sewage and drainage requirements of fixed static caravans located close to the river. The size and scale of the proposed static units relative to the touring caravans and the likelihood of people occupying the static units for longer periods of time, which will change the character of the park adversely. The intense frustration of the PC, this objection was missed by the planning officer, who stated on the planning authority's website, the parish council's comments should now be displayed. I am satisfied that the recommended planning conditions are fully sufficient to address the concerns expressed. This includes the use of an occupancy restriction to prevent the use of the static caravans for residential purposes, including by seasonal workers. The statics page on the applicant's website does not appear to impose an occupancy limitation beyond the March-January season and suggests statics are for a holiday home or property, implying possible residential use. As seasonal workers are more likely to seek accommodation in the open season, it is difficult to see this as a real preventative measure. In the same note, the planning officer emphasised that any future proposals for conversions of touring pitches to statics will be less likely to succeed. This is because they will potentially lead to a cumulative reduction of touring pitches. The parish council's firmly held views that the current planning application triggers a concern expressed by the planning officer, as the addition of 61 statics will completely change the character of the park, reduce the proportion of touring sites significantly, and have a greater visual impact by being permanently in place. The parish council does not consider that the harm caused to the character of the landscape is offset sufficiently by the marginal tourism benefits available. While the holiday park's touring pitches already deliver tremendous benefits to the local economy, a 2019 UK CCA report on the economic benefits of pitches makes a clear distinction in off-site visitor spend per day, which is 28% higher for renters and tourists than for owners. This is unsurprising, as owners are more likely to have all they need on site and will be less inclined to go out and explore what their area has to offer, as it is already known to them. Tourists and holiday renters should be prioritised over owned statics. The PC objects to the holiday park being dominated by statics due to the visual impact and overdevelopment of the park, and considers that the marginal economic benefit of statics relative to tourists is insufficient to outweigh this harm. The disproportionate harm that would be caused to the local countryside amenity means that the application should be refused.
Thank you, Richard. We now have the local member, Mrs. Bibb Parry, please.
Yeah. There we are. Yeah. Sorry, I've been sat on them.
I saw you this morning walking your little white dog.
Did you? You won't be very happy. I've been a long time.
And you have 5 minutes to address the committee, please. Thank you.
You're there.
I'm Vivian Parry, and I'm the Shropshire Council for Ludlow South. Overton site is in my area. I was not the councillor when the touring site came in, but I approved of the site because I thought it was good for tourism and to bring more people into the area. This is not the case with the statics. I feel that this is a conservation area, and always has been. The river has otters and newts in, and it used to be the old Roman site hundreds of years ago, and we had the Americans there during the war. Because it slopes down, and all the tours and statics that we have at the moment are in the bottom end, they cannot be seen as much from the road or from the A49. This site, very kindly, Mr. Morris said to me, would you like to have a look round at the new site? And I went in his Land Rover and he took me around the whole of the site. This is the thing we couldn't see anything at all from the bottom end. Nothing could be seen, not the statics or the tourist. We then went up to the new site. We are going to have, this side is going to have the embankment cut out on it to get a new road in, but it winds like that to go down to the side. You'd have to cut away the embankment completely. As I said, it was the old Roman site. So that's a worry in itself. When they take the embankment away, he has said he's going to move the residual rubbish elsewhere. He didn't say where, but when he took me up to the top, he told me, oh, I'm going to put more trees in, which are not on the new plan, more trees in, so that you can't see from the main road, because the main road runs along the top. Nobody, including the people that live across the road, were told that this was happening. I had to go all the way along Overton Road and explain to each person that there were going to be new static caravans in there. The statics will, I know there's going to be 2 months where there's not going to be people in them, but you're going to have more traffic on that road. They will at least have 2 or 3 cars for each static caravan, because it's more, and as my parish council said, this is going to be, it's a development that will look like a housing estate, which we do not want in this area. They do not allow affordable housing in Richards Castle Parish Council. I tried to get that from this council for houses. They don't want that. They want it to be, as it always has been, with the view of the countryside, and this will make it look like a housing estate. Overton Road, over the years, we've had a terrible lot of problem with the garage, who has 30 cars out on the road. People who are coming in and out will have to negotiate trying to get past these terrible cars. You can imagine how long it takes to get past them, including we have a school that can't see to pull out to see whether they're going left or right. And when the garage come out from the forecourt, we have this problem with traffic. It makes it a very dangerous road. So we're going to have all these cars coming out. They're quite right at the parish. People that will be in those statics will bring stuff from home. They will not necessarily shopping as much in Ludlow. I feel that the problem with this is they want 61 static houses, and it's going to change the whole look. You cannot, if you sit on the hillside, which you very kindly let me do in his Morris van, you can see the A49. It was the middle of summer. I could still see the A49, and you can see the road behind. You can also see right across from the hillside. The people on the hillsides will be able to see this site clearly with the green static vans. And I'm sorry, I'm completely against this, as you can most probably tell.
Any questions for Councillor Parry, please? No, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Laura Scott Bracken, Release Planning. Scott. Okay, just right hand side of the microphone, and you have 3 minutes to address the committee, please.
Chair and members of the committee, I speak on behalf of the applicant Maurice Leisure in support of the application. The officer's report clearly outlines the key planning matters associated with the proposed use, identifying that the principle of development is acceptable and that no objections have been raised from highways, conservation and archaeology. In addition, comments from ecology and landscape and drainage team have been addressed, concluding that the proposed development is acceptable and in accordance with the development plan and the national planning policy framework. The Parish Council has expressed concerns in relation to the visual impact of the proposed use of static caravans for residential use and not tourism. This has been addressed by incorporating a 2-phase approach. Phase 1 includes all the earthworks, access and infrastructure across the entirety of the site and holiday homes on pitches 1 to 26 and 56 to 61. Phase 2 consists of a pitch bases on the holiday homes on pitches 27 to 55. Phase 2 would commence 3 years after Phase 1 is complete. The proposed landscaping would commence early in the initial construction of Phase 1. Our approach demonstrates that the local visual and landscape impacts are mitigated and comprehensively addressed. As outlined in the officer's report, the ecology and landscape officers are satisfied that the submitted information is sufficiently robust. It is considered that the site is optimum to extend the existing holiday park, as it recognises the intrinsic character and beauty of the countryside and the wider benefits from natural capital and the ecosystem services. There is no intention to use the holiday homes for residential use, and this would be controlled by a site licence in the same way as the existing park. This ensures that the economic benefit from visitor accommodation, which has been agreed with officers, is retained. This is an additional £754,204 of visitor spend in the local economy per annum, and the existing and proposed pitches would sustain 47.7 full-time equivalent jobs in the local economy. There has been significant support from local businesses within Ludlow for the proposals too. It is considered that the design, scale, layout and landscaping of the site is acceptable, and it provides significant social, economic and environmental benefits. As such, the application is recommended for approval by officers, and we respectfully request that members grant planning permission subject to the conditions suggested. Thank you for your time.
Henry, please.
Thank you. What colours will the caravans be?
They can be controlled by a condition. They can be white, they can be green. We can agree with them by a suitable condition.
That's really easy, my.
Yeah, no, yeah, I can definitely come back on that. Yeah, at the moment, as I said, obviously there isn't obviously it's not specified within the planning application. It would, we spoke about this actually out on site. So the existing units that are there are all in environmental colours. So yeah, it would be general greens and there'll be some browns. But yes, if that is a particular concern, it can be an additional condition if members are minded to grant approval that could be attached. And again, we'd probably formulate that it was, it would be a scheme rather than being particularly prescriptive on a particular element. But yeah, again, that can certainly be agreed.
We would look to replicate what's already there to make it consistent across the whole site.
I mean, I think it's worldwide known, and known by many things, including Mr. 18B29. But I have to say, there isn't a single 18B29 cladding on the site. That's Raven. It's the dark blue that's recommended for buildings in countryside. Landscapes become blue as you. Anyway. But my feeling about that particular subject is that, yes, repeat what there is, because I think if you start introducing 18B29 roofing, you're going to contrast that the consequence of that is going to be worse. So, what was I going to ask you? Oh yes, they are genuinely all for holiday use.
Yeah.
So the point about people not spending money in town is not a true point.
I would say not, knowing our research shows that there is a trend now that's shifting from tourers to statics. People want to spend time in statics, but they still want to explore the countryside. They want to go into local towns. They don't just want to stay in the static caravan.
Thank you very much. So that means there'll be a condition saying no resident.
Yeah, yes, there is certainly a condition that restricts it to residential use in accordance with the the social plan conditions regarding that matter. But also just in relation to your point on 18B29, just to make the point that here we haven't got long distance views of the site as well. As I said, obviously they are very localised, those views. So
yeah, at your mercy.
Okay, yeah, that's fine.
Yes, in view of the fact that it's just been confirmed that the vans will be appropriately environmental coloured and the screening that is planned as well, I would be minded to support this application. I do think it will support the local.
Hang on. No, we're not being the gunner.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
Right, if you need, you want to go.
What did you say?
No, I'm just going to say I'm minded to support this application. I do think it will benefit the local tourist economy, not just for local shops, but also tourist attractions and the tourist area.
Councillor Bollington, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm also minded to support this. I've talked to a lot of people who have been to the touring park. Indeed, only the other day I was having a beer with them in the brewery. and they come regularly from Wiltshire, they prefer a static because they don't have to tow something from Wiltshire. Which they said, well, you know, that's complicated driving, it's stressful driving on modern roads. And so they prefer a static. They just had lunch in one of the pubs and they were consuming more in the brewery. And their only complaint, which is not something we can really tackle in this planning application, is the problem with the path going between Ludlow, or particularly Ludford, and the Cheltenham Arms up to the site, which is very narrow, tendency for the hedge to overgrow, and very, very difficult to walk a dog on it. And Ludlow is a dog walking town, almost everywhere except dogs. And that's one of the reasons people come here, because we're dog friendly, or come there because we're not in Ludlow. So I actually think it's had the existing touring park has had a big impact on the economy. And I think this is another good thing. And with those environmental colours conditioned and a scheme conditioned, and we do have the fact they cannot be permanent residents and they've got to be visitors in as a condition already, then I'm minded to, well, I will support it.
Kendrick, please.
Thank you, Chair. If this was a proposed system of static caravans that weren't well arranged and the landscaping wasn't up to scratch, then we wouldn't be happy with it at all, or I wouldn't be. But this is a very well organised, tidy and well maintained site by a well-respected local company. I think if the caravans are low profile and green and brown muted colours, it'll help to reduce the scenic impact from nearby elevated viewpoints. And we did go and look at a couple of those elevated viewpoints this morning. And I think when the landscaping is complete, which will take a number of years, then I think it will not stand out like a sore thumb, although it will still be visible from certain distances. I think it will support the local economy through job creation, if not maybe some local suppliers as well will be helping out, but certainly good for the local economy. But I do agree the static caravan owners, and I'm one myself, tend to take perhaps more of their own food when they're going for a weekend or even a week or whatever. But it doesn't mean that they won't still explore the local attractions, of which Ludlow's got plenty of them. So I think, on balance, it will be actually a very good addition for the local economy.
Councillor Potter, please.
Just a quick question. Do we know what I was looking in the report? I can't see what the acreage of the site is. Do we have that sort of information?
We do, and I don't have it necessarily to hand, but it's not anywhere in the report.
I can't see it.
No, you're probably right.
Well, that's what I'm just.
Oh yeah, well, it's it's about 2 hectares, I think, is the site.
Yeah,
would that be about? Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, I'll come back to
I
you.
think it's something. I think off the top of my head, it's something like 2.58.
2.58 hectares. Okay.
Central Lumby, please.
I can, if you want, I can find that out. And
yes. No, it's all right. That's what I got the answer.
Okay.
Jem, can I?
Yeah, I've benefited from the site. Sorry.
We'll go to Lumby on next.
I benefited from the site visit. I asked the owner, and he confirmed that all the homes would be owned by somebody, so that they're not going to be holiday lets. The holiday lets, you get the maximum amount of people that are exploring somewhere new. They're always going out to the pub, they're always going out for meals, and they go out to the attractions. Now, I tow a touring caravan, and I go on lots of sites that have got statics, and there are people on the statics who live there for the 9 months. There's lots of caravans that there's never anybody there, and the ones that turn up, they always bring their own food, and because they've done, in this instance, Ludlow to death, that they couldn't be bothered to go out. Now, the reality is, this couple that come from Wiltshire, they've got a caravan, lovely. And how often do they come up? 2, 3 times a year? So at the end of the day, these are second homes that we're building, a second homes estate in the middle of the countryside that is highly visible. And as such, I agree with the local councillor and I won't be supporting this.
Tindall, please.
Okay, so all I was going to say was the access road. I thought it had been rather well designed and that it's going to be routed along the steep escarpment, if I could call it that, So it won't be visible. I don't think even from afar. It will be cut and presumed to film like that. So I think that's commendable. Yeah. I'm confused now as who's going to be allowed to live in these things, or whether they own them or not. Or I mean,
yes, it certainly is so you would own the pitch. So as in it's individuals that own the pitch, but as in because as I said of planning conditions, licensing requirements, they wouldn't be able to occupy that as their main residence. So as in these are people that you know, as I said, that there might be a family group that would, you know, have an individual unit, and you know that family unit would come in at different times of the year and use that. But as I said, yes, they're not rented out directly from the site. Somebody owns. Right. Somebody will own those individual, or they will be sold to individuals.
So the ground will be leasehold by Morris. They would own the ground, and then the static caravans will be something that they buy and sell.
But that is what our, you know, is in. There is no restriction within our development plan in relation to that. As I said, obviously it talks about, yes, obviously touring units and the benefits, but it also talks that you know, static units are appropriate, that are used on that basis. You know, the principle of the development is acceptable on that basis because of the benefit it does bring to the local economies.
Councillor Harper, please.
Thank you, Chair. As a Ludlovian, I think I'd probably ought to offer some opinion. I do have some sympathy with the parish council on this. I was very much in favour of it. Its conception for development years ago. It's now getting somewhat bigger, and in my view could be construed as overdevelopment, and it could be that it will change the dynamics of what's already there, which generally is well received. It does contribute greatly to the economy. It's true what the local member says, that road infrastructure from the garage, there can be anything from 25 cars parked outside that. You've got a busy livestock market adjacent to it, which has 2 markets a week. So there is an impact there that is going to be felt. Now, whether it's acceptable, that might be. Having said that, I don't know if there's enough reasoning to object or refuse this application. I would possibly have liked to have seen it spread out over a wider area. I think there is a need for such development in the locality. Now, whether this on this one site, it's too much. It is well run, I have to say that, and I've got no qualms there. So I thought, a little bit like Councillor Lobby, I thought I'd play devil's advocate and offer my opinion. I haven't decided which way I'll go on this yet. If any other members wish to add to the debate.
Councillor Lomby, please.
Yes, I thank Councillor Tyndall because he reminded me of something I was meant to say. I actually don't think that the access road as is a good idea, because you're actually destroying a field, in fact, used as a dog walk. So you won't be able to use it as a dog walk, so I don't know where that's going, to get to effectively the same height as if you came off where the hard standing pitches are. You only lose one hard standing pitch to come in. So you've gone through the normal gate and then that, but you're creating another road that I think could be seen from the road. I think visually this all can be seen from the road. So,
Councillor Bullington, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just to clarify, the couple from Swindon, I should have got their names as been referred to so often. They were actually renting a unit that somebody else owned, because as they rushed to get the bus back, they said, maybe see you next year, because we've booked all the way through next year. It's so busy that we have to book a year in advance. And so a lot of, if you own a static caravan, now some people may use it only for themselves, but a lot of people let it out. Yeah. and, you know, have an arrangement with the management company. So I would like to propose that we accept this proposal, accept the officer's recommendation with the additional condition about an environmental colour scheme.
Thanks a lot, please.
Thank you, Chair. Actually, I was going to say similar to Councillor Boddington in that are they able to? Sometimes they don't allow you to let them out, but I mean, obviously they do. You know, a static caravan, they have different rules and regulations. Do you know what the rules are? Are the owners allowed to let out their caravans privately?
Yeah, all I can say is from a planning perspective, the planning condition would not limit that. As I said, obviously that is a matter that is obviously there might be restrictions that the site themselves place on individuals. But in terms of the planning condition, no, there certainly isn't any limit. The planning condition limits it to a holiday use, and that is by anybody. So,
and are we aware if the
Chairman, are we allowed to ask the applicant if the lessees are going to be allowed to sublet?
You can ask the applicant, yeah, if you want to.
Can I ask the applicant?
Or the agent?
I can clarify it with the client, but I would assume that yes, they will be let out. So people who own them can then be able to rent them out or have other friends and families to stay at the.
But Chairman, if I may say so, that would be very good, because I think that would boost the tourist aspect of it rather than someone having.
Councillor, please.
Sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Just wanted to add to one of the points that was raised, the suggestion of probably retired people spending 9 months of the year there, not going out of the caravan. I had a static caravan on the Welsh coast. It cost me about £5,000 a year to keep it there, and I've spent 2 nights there this year. But that doesn't, for work commitments reasons this year. But my members of my family have been there for weeks and weeks, and my son has 2 young children, and they've explored every attraction in the area multiple times, and they're looking forward to going again next year. Thank you.
Okay. But I think it was a good site visit this morning. We went to a lot of viewpoints, and when you stand at the top of the site itself and you look across the woods and Nelson, you see a lovely row of white houses. Just don't blend in with the backdrop. This will blend in with what's around it, and we're specifying colours and different things. I don't see a problem with it, and I'm happy to second the proposal for accepting the application. Councillor Potts, please.
Well, I was going to briefly, once I worked out the 8 acres and hectares, members of this committee will know my feeling on the concerns I have around using agricultural land grade to agricultural land. I've worked out the rough tonnage to the acre you might get from a wheat crop, or how many lambs you might produce from that. I'm satisfied, though, that for a relatively small site, a small piece of agricultural land, and the actual increased benefit in terms of tourism and the economic benefit to the area, that I would happily, but it's already been seconded,
Chairman, someone did remark that you wouldn't be able to get a combine harvester on that.
No, you wouldn't.
I mean, it's astonishing that it's grade 2. I mean, I know quite a lot about the land classification maps, but I wouldn't put it more than 3B or even 4.
I just
Thank you.
come back.
Got hay rolls, haven't we?
What?
We've got hay rolls, haven't we?
Yeah, well, I was just going to say, obviously from the site visit, and this matter was raised. Sorry, I didn't bring it up as part of this. I must admit, I slightly underestimated the size of the field. I've got it in front of me now, which is actually 5 hectares. But sorry about that. Sorry,
but about 12.5 acres.
But yeah, as I said, so this was a matter that was raised by myself with the agent during the application. The difficulty we've got on this site is that it is surrounded by grade 2 land. And in terms of, I think we mentioned this on the site for the benefit of people that weren't there, that you will see from the site, yes, that it does appear to be lower quality than the surrounding grade 2 land in terms of, obviously being able to take crops off that and whatnot. Because as I said, there are certainly steeply sloping sections of that. But as I said, obviously that is raised as part of the officer's report. So and the points made in regard to that matter are made in the report. So but yeah, I just wanted to clarify that.
Chairman, I don't deny that there are hay bales at the top, but then mowing and baling hay is a much different process from combining a proper meet. You couldn't possibly even begin to do that.
Okay. You want to come back in, Mr. Upper?
Yeah, just a quick question. It's actually something that Councillor Tyndall touched on regarding reletting. One thing that Ludlow is very short of, or often short of, is temporary accommodation. I just wonder whether or not that's something that Shropshire Council could consider in wavering when there is crucial local need at a short period of time.
What, you mean refugees?
I don't mean refugees. I mean slightly more local than that. But sometimes at short notice, you have to find homes for, often with young children involved. I just wonder whether or not that's something that Shropshire Council can consider in perhaps wavering any conditions it may feel like applies.
I mean, that would be a matter that would come forward in the future. I mean, the way that the conditions are constructed are so that as I said, obviously they're used as holiday accommodation, and as I said, obviously it prohibits it from somebody's main residence. So if that were to happen, it would be via obviously a variation of that condition. At which point, yes, we can consider the merits of that at that time. But it's not something that needs to that currently forms part of that.
I appreciate it.
Okay.
Right, we're proposing a seconder to accept the officer's recommendation and delegate conditions to the officers. Yeah. So we're proposing a seconder. Could you take the vote, please, Idris? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just to clarify, that was subject to a condition regarding environmental colour scheme and also a condition regarding phasing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Caroline Bagnall.
4.
Andy Boddington.
4.
Rachel Connolly.
4.
Richard Hoffer.
4.
Nick Ignick. 4. Christian Lee.
4.
Hilary Luff.
4.
Nigel Lumby.
Yes.
Surprise.
4.
Robert Tyndall.
4.
David Evans.
4. Karen, we're on the recommendation. Now go to item number 7. Thank you, Lee. Right, we now go to item number 7, which is proposed affordable dwelling at west of Optic Board Street at Margate. It's an item due for report, Steve.
This application is a new dwelling brought forward under the council's single plot affordable scheme. We advised at the pre-application stage that it would not be considered part of or adjacent to a recognised settlement. However, the application has been forthcoming. The Housing Enabling Officer has confirmed that the applicants have met the qualifying criteria. Otherwise, there are no real concerns. The proposed dwelling is placed centrally within the plot. It does project the built environment slightly further north than existing, but it has its merits in that it's screened from the road by an existing barn and it's tucked into the southeastern corner of a field where there is less impact on the future use of the field. It's a modest sized dwelling, 2 bedrooms, which are proposed in the roof. It's 1.5 stories. The access is existing. Obviously, it would be upgraded as part of the proposal for the dwelling. There is a public right of way on the west side, but it's unaffected. You can see there's a sort of diagonal dotted line which roughly follows the line of the public right of way, and it's not affected by the access. The design and materials are commensurate with the rural environment. The design includes a lot of traditional details which would be appropriate within the rural environment, and the materials would also be suited. Therefore, the refusal reason is purely on the location of the property, in that we don't, that in policy terms, we don't consider that the site is within a recognisable or adjacent to a recognisable named settlement. There are scattered dwellings in this area, but there is land in between them. They are separate from each other. There is no lumping of dwellings, so there are no 2 or 3 dwellings located close together. All the dwellings are isolated from each other. So for that reason, the recommendation is for refusal. However, if members do want to approve, we would ask that it be dealt with under delegated matters once a section 106 has been completed.
Thank you. Right, we've got 3 speakers. We've got Ellen Koenig.
Who? Sorry, I didn't quite catch that.
Ellen Koenig. She's clerk to the parish council. 3 minutes to address the committee, please.
Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, my name is Heather Koenig and I'm the clerk for St Margaret Parish Council. The chair is unable to come, so has asked me to read this statement which you have in your packs. And this is from the chair of the parish council. I apologise that I'm unable to come to this meeting, but have asked our clerk to read out this statement on my behalf. St Margaret Parish Council are unanimous in support of this application for an affordable home. The criteria for eligibility for an affordable home has already been established. The proposed dwelling itself is modest in size, stylistically appropriate for the area and located adjacent to agricultural buildings already present. I understand that there is concern about whether Cockshutford is a settlement and if the property truly lies in the core of Cockshutford. As well as being chair of the parish council, I also myself live in Cockshutford and I am therefore very familiar with the geography of the settlement. I thought it might be useful to provide some information in this regard to the committee. Cockshutford fulfils 3 criteria to be described as a settlement. A collection of households sometimes strung along the side of a road. Cockshutford is a rural linear settlement of properties located either side of the Cockshutford Road. Please see the aerial photograph of the settlement attached, which you have in your packs. B is recognised as a settlement by the locals. Yes, it is, including by parish council. There are even road signs directing travellers to Cockshutford. It is named on the Ordnance Survey map. Cockshutford is formed with many of the dwellings in the settlement having associated grazing land and agricultural buildings, and as such, dwellings are dispersed along the road rather than being in a cluster. Figures 1 and 2 that you have in your packs below show Cockshutford with all the existing dwellings marked with yellow stars and the proposed dwelling that's applied for as a red cross. Figure 2 also marks agricultural buildings, yellow circles. It is my view as chair of the parish council and as resident of Cockshutford that the site for the proposed dwelling lies clearly within the settlement of Cockshutford and is similarly placed from other properties to those already present. In addition, you may have seen the comment on the planning portal by the previous chair of St Margaret Parish Council, chair for 20 years, who fully supports this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, please? Can
I just ask, sorry, Ken, that you mentioned the grazing rights, that's presumably on Key Liberty and the Yeld.
Say again?
You mentioned some of the occupiers having grazing rights. That's presumably on the Yeld or Key Liberty.
That's on Clean Liberty.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
I just thought I'd clarify that.
Sure.
Yes, sir.
I'll ask the clerk, and I'll also refer it to planning officers, because it's referred to in the recommendation for the refusal. What is a sustainable location in your view? I know what my view is. This isn't the top of the Brown Clee.
No.
So what does form a sustainable location in this day and age?
One that has easy access to services, that will not require multiple vehicular journeys, and
Quite difficult in South Shropshire.
yeah.
Given the existing properties that are in the Clee and on the Brown Clee, what makes one a sustainable location, but next door not?
Can I answer that? In far as that community, it is closely connected to Clee St Margaret Village, which has a village hall, post office, a post box, and a telephone box, which is the best you're going to get in those rural areas. Shropshire also has its own telephone box, which has a defibrillator and a post box, etc., within a few hundred yards of the property. If you look at all of the little settlements within that area, apart from the very specific village of Clee St Margaret, this is what they all look like. They are houses with a garden, with a patch of land, because that's how they were all developed. And this is no different. You have a house, a garden, a patch of land, a house, a garden, patch of land, all the way along that road. It cannot really go over the road because you've got Clee Liberty. So you couldn't have a circular settlement there because it would be on to the grazing land, which is
very steep. Okay. We'll come back then.
Yeah, the members should remember that this is an exception site where we would not normally be approving new dwellings in the open countryside, and therefore there has to be an additional reason for the exception site, and sustainability is linked into that, so that it would have to be demonstrated that there were other reasons why the site was sustainable, i.e. close to a recognised native settlement that had services, or where journeys would be reduced because of its location.
I'll pick this up in the
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much. Now call on the local member, Mrs. Cecilia Motley. And you will have 5 minutes to address the committee, please, Councillor.
Thank you very much, Chair. A very good afternoon to all members. Nice to see you all. Right, now.
We're all paying attention.
Good.
I put extra cardboard in my trousers.
Good. I hope I don't have to use my spanking machine. Okay, we're wasting time. This application is down for refusal on the basis that it is not within a recognised named settlement and not sustainable because it is part of a sporadic pattern of settlement. I think we've more or less dealt with that. But I would just like to point out that members here will know and understand that unlike other very rural counties such as Northumberland and Cumbria, which have large land masses with nobody living there, the whole county of Shropshire is inhabited. And it is inhabited often, regardless of topography, in a very linear, sparse and sporadic manner. That is Shropshire. I'm terribly sorry to have to inform the planning officer. But the pattern of development in the very rural areas is small scale, it is sporadic. We have narrow lanes, which everybody knows, and relatively few amenities, but amenities are within reach. We have doctor's surgery, we have shops in Ditton Priors, which is no more than 5 miles away, which is actually quite luxurious for parts of my division. I also have to inform you that the Corvedale division has absolutely no towns. We are entirely settlements and villages, and that is the way it is. That's the way it's always been. And Cockshott Ford, forgive my correcting the clerk, but that's normally the way that it's pronounced, is one of those sporadic settlements. It's clearly mentioned in the Ordnance Survey map, which covers the AONB and the Clee Hills. In the electoral register for the Corvedale division, Cockshott Ford has its own entry with some 13 properties therein. That, as one of my parish councillors remarked, is almost equating to a town. As far as we're concerned, the owners of many of those properties around Cockshott Ford strongly support this application. There are several mentions of Cockshott Ford in the Victoria County History of Shropshire, Volume 10, with particular reference to old squatters' cottages and coal mining and lime kilns, which has been carried on by previous generations in the Brown Clee Hills. This is ancient land. People have been living on and around the Brown Clee for many generations. Also, as the clerk mentioned, the chair of the past chair of Cleves and Margaret Parish has divided the parish into three distinct bits. The first is Cleves and Margaret village itself. The next is Cockshott Ford to the northeast, where it then joins the parish of Abden and Heath, which is another historic and linear settlement. And all these areas have a very strong sense of community and mutual support between the settlements. They all look after each other up on the hill. So it is a settlement, albeit that its development pattern is not as you would find in the towns. And I think this is where we get ourselves into trouble in Shropshire. Because I noticed in item 6.1.2, it says residential development must concentrate in locations that promote economic, social and environmental stability. Well, what does that mean when you've got an area which is basically all farming? That is everything. That's what they do up there. That is what the applicant does. He is a farmer. He's a member of a very old established farming family who have farmed the Brown Clee for generations. And I think we must accept that if people want to live in the countryside, that they really should have the right to do so. With regard to the environmental sustainability bit, which comes into 6.1.2, this particular family have been working very hard with the AONB, and the applicant represents the commoners on the Clee. We've got a whole lot of people who are commoners on the Clee, and has also been working with the AONB to project Our Common Cause, which is specifically working to prevent overgrazing on the hill, bracken control and general good maintenance of the hill. So there is that to take into account as well. Sustainability is based on many factors, including intangible assets such as social fabric. If you allow no housing of any sort in very rural areas, you are ipso facto damaging the social fabric of settlements, and that we must not allow to happen. If we don't allow any development in our very rural settlements, they will die. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, please? Okay, thank you. I call on Mrs. Diane Humphries, the agent for the applicant, please. And you have 3 minutes to address the committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair and members of the Planning Committee. This application is submitted under the guidance offered in the Council's adopted supplementary planning document for affordable single plot exception sites. In this case, it has been evidence that the applicants are in housing need, have strong local connections, which the Parish Council and local member can attest, and have a genuine need to reside in the immediate area. As such, Ian and Elizabeth meet the eligibility requirements of the policy. In relation to the site, the Council's adopted policy offers the following advice. A settlement always comprises a group of houses occupied by households from different families. The policy explains that where the number of houses is small or where the houses are dispersed, it is the combination of both these factors that determine whether the dwellings constitute a settlement. The policy further advises that because a settlement is a relationship between different properties, the limits of the settlement are defined by where the relationship peters out. This will be further informed by the settlement pattern and by the views of the local community. In relation to Cockshepford, which is clearly a named settlement, it has been evident that within proximity to the site and forming a substantive part of the settlement, there are at least 11 houses. Whether the site is within or adjoining a settlement is a matter of judgment. The policy emphasises that this judgment should be informed by the local member and the parish council, who are best placed to understand these relationships within their communities. In this instance, both the local member and the parish council support this site and consider it to be centrally sited within the settlement of Cockshepford. It is therefore disappointing that the officers have not aligned their view and consequently their recommendation with that of both the parish council and the local member. Clearly, isolated remote sites should be resisted. This site is neither. It is well grouped with existing buildings and the design has been kept to 1.5 stories to assist with its assimilation into the wider landscape. It is therefore hoped that the Plan Committee will approve this application for an affordable dwelling made in response to an identified local need. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, please? Councillor Harper, Councillor Potter, Councillor Bollington again. Councillor Harper, please.
Here we go again.
Absolutely.
We've been here before, and I understand the position that officers are in with the question of does it sit in or next to a recognised settlement. I was asked exactly that question last week, and for those members that think that, well, I'm going to support anything that's got an affordable badge on it, I did actually, when I referred back to the officer, that I didn't think it sat in a recognised settlement. It was in total isolation on its own. Totally, this is in my division.
Oh.
So I don't agree with everything that comes up in my own, but I think we've got a duty to be consistent. And I'm proud of the voting record of Planning South on when these applications come up time and time again, it puts officers in a position. And I think we ought to align any future policy in direct view of what this committee has approved time and time again. My daughter, son-in-law farming in the Clee, and I can only confirm what the local member said. It's a community that very much looks after its own. I've been to village fetes there, bonfires there, the support they turn out time and time again. This is not in isolation. I appreciate it is exactly as the local member says. It's a linear type development. Like a lot of the affordables that have been approved in my own division, it's a linear development. There isn't exactly a nucleus of a village. It's exactly as it is, but it's not in isolation. There's a building there, and I think that is crucial and probably key to this. And I think in these occasions we need to give additional weight to the parish council. I think we have to give additional weight to the local members' views. I do know the family. There's that many of them in and around the Brown Clee, and it's our duty to try and ensure that we find dwellings for them to live and continue to work in the local community, and farming in particular. I could go on. I think probably you've got the gist of my. I'll hand it over to other members.
Councillor Potter, please.
You're probably not going to be surprised with what I say, what I do want to say is actually I feel for officers who are put in a position, who are following a policy, and I reiterate what I say. I think as a council, we really need to look at this policy, particularly inside Shropshire, because I don't think it is enabling officers, and it puts you in a very difficult position, almost pitted against us as local members who all nearly represent rural areas inside Shropshire and understand, and I think it was quite eloquently put, if not robustly, by Councillor Motley, what we feel and what we're trying to do to represent our residents and the needs of our communities in a rural area where rural communities do feel somewhat under attack, under threat, way of life, traditions. And I know it's all about trying to protect the countryside by not developing within the countryside. But believe me, local residents would be the first to object should they felt it was unsuitable for their areas. So I really do feel for officers who have to put forward the position that they do. I stress again that we really need to look at the policy for this, because it's clearly not working, particularly for South Shropshire. I mean, I represent the North Shropshire area and I have the same issue, but it doesn't seem to have happened as much in the North Shropshire Planning Committee. I just on the name settlement, we have said it, I don't know how many times it's been said today, Cockshut Ford. It's clearly got a name. And it's clearly a very old name. It's recognised locally. It's recognised by the local member. It's a sort of, it reflects the nature and the character of this county. And I'm unsurprisingly minded to support it based on what I've heard and purely by looking at the map, I think, which was on the first slide.
Please.
Thank you, Chair. I won't repeat points already made because I agree with them, and I agree with what the speakers have said about the name settlement. First, that I decided to see what Shropshire Council actually calls this and the houses there and what addresses it gives them on its council tax returns, etc. So I looked it up on the ArcGIS map, and I just put in Patch Farm while I was sitting here, which is one of the ones which was on the first map, and it says Patch Farm, Cockshutford Road, Cockshutford. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that right, but Cockshutford, Lisa Margaret, Shropshire, and the council recognised it as a named settlement, and on the map in front of me, it's got it in bold letters. So it is a named settlement. I mean, the postman, or post lady, would know where to deliver post if it had that written on it. So I think it is that. Just finally, very quickly on policy, because we've talked about that. I understand a paper is coming to Cabinet probably in February with a revised policy.
Are we being consulted?
Well, the discussion that we're having was we were going to have a briefing on affordable housing. And it's agreed we'll now delay that until this paper comes out so that we don't have to have two discussions.
Okay. Councillor Tyndall, please.
Yes, I know this area very well. For the last 40 years, I lived directly over the hill and down the other side, and I've managed the estate that runs up to the top of the Clean Liberty. And I know the family, I've had no involvement in this, and I confirm that the Hayways have been part and parcel of Clean Liberty in the Yeld and Cockshutford. It is a linear village settlement, and we have approved many of these applications where the planning officer has proposed refusal. And I think one of the reasons is that it makes planning officers slightly nervous that there isn't a red line around the development saying, if you get it, you're all right, if you're out of it, you're not. And the policy is deliberately worded in such a way from South Shropshire Times to allow a certain amount of flexibility in where houses in the rural areas can be built, taking into account the specific characteristics of South Shropshire. And I am quite happy, once again, to go against the planning officer's recommendation to refuse. I can't see where we've got to in who's the proposal, who seconded, but if there hasn't been anybody, I'm more than happy to propose that we approve this application.
Councillor Hignett, please, and Councillor Connolly, please.
Thank you, Chair. I don't know this area very well, and in some ways it would have been nice if we'd have had time to go on a site visit, purely and simply because one of my criteria is always to look where the signs are for entering and leaving the settlement. But I do know that looking at maps and what I've seen on here, it is a linear dispersed settlement, in my opinion, We've got to support young and local people, and as you probably gathered, I will be supporting this.
Conley, please.
Okay, I'm going to be a bit of a pain here. I don't know how this works, but there's two people on the committee that have actually said that they know the applicants, and I'm not sure if that is correct and proper when it comes to voting.
Can I just explain my position on that? It's very difficult not to know of families in that part of the world. I mean, I think I probably know more or less everybody in and around Browntree Hill, because that's where I live, that's where I worked, and who I represent at council. So if any application is made by somebody I know, then I wouldn't be here at all. I'd have to excuse myself all the time. But I have not been involved in the process of application. My advice hasn't been sought. I didn't know until the Christian names, sorry, 4 names were mentioned, who the actual members of the Hayway clan are. So I'm perfectly satisfied that I've got nothing prejudicial to declare. No doubt the solicitor will.
I'll just ask you just to come in here, please.
No, that seems fine, but Councillor Hook, did you say you know that?
Just like Robert said, the hayways, the Brownclea, the farming, I'm a farmer. How could I not know them? I don't know them specifically. As just like Robert, I didn't know this application was coming forward today until I read the papers. So I've got no qualms of,
you just kind of know them in passing. You don't go to the house for dinner or tea or.
I haven't done till day. If they want to ask me, I haven't done today.
Okay, we haven't tried courting the daughters either.
Should we come back in again, Rachel?
I just want to make sure it's all proper and correct.
Yeah.
That's all I'm asking.
I've never been proper or correct, but on this occasion I am.
Right, when I first stood for council back in 2005-6, this was my area for Councillor Motley, and I travelled it because I think there's 11 parish councils in that settlement in the area at the time, and I know Coxford very well. It is a sparse community. It is spread out, so you don't actually get a centre to it. Same as Lee St Margaret. Look at Stanton Lacey. You look at Stoke Millborough, where the village hall is way out of the village. You know, so you've got rural sparsity right the way through all that sort of area. And I'm minded to support the application. So do we have a proposer?
I think I did.
Yeah.
I'm happy to second that, Chair.
I'm up second with the conditions delegated to the officers regarding 106 and everything else.
But all the usual single plot affordable housing conditions like maximum internal floor area measured, whatever it is, 100 square metres.
So that'd be a section 106 agreement as well.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
sorry, of course.
Right, we've got a proposer and the seconder that we go against the officer's recommendation and we approve the application and delegate all the conditions to the officers regarding the 106 and anything else that goes with it. Okay.
Caroline Bagnall.
For.
Andy Buddington.
For.
Rachel Connolly.
For.
Richard Hoffer.
For.
Nick Ignett. For. Christian Lee. For. Hilary Love.
For.
Nigel Lumbey.
Ed Pratt. For
Robert Hindle. For. David Evans.
For. Thank you. Right, we know when you listen to this
Yeah, we can't possibly be, I get that, because the light is fading.
Right.
My horse is waiting for me. Mr. Harper, would you like your rather nice pen back, or may I keep these on the table?
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to do the field then, please. And the guys are going to deal with it.
Yeah.
Right, I think really you could put these from list in rather than going through them one by one. There was just one in there that DJ Margaret, I believe, went to an appeal.
I can do this.
Yeah, do you want to do it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just to run through.
Yeah.
So yes, we had an appeal decision at the mill, actually St Margaret, which obviously certain members will like. Oh, sorry.
If we're live, they won't be able to hear you.
That certain members were in attendance at. So yes, we successfully defended that that appeal. So it was an appeal for an extension and other things on the back of a listed property. So there was the conversion of a bakehouse and the upgrading of a mill, but as I said, obviously the main concerns were in relation to the scale of the extension to that property. So yes, that was successfully defended. They also went for costs against us on the basis that members went against officer recommendation without just cause. But as I said, obviously the fact that it was dismissed sort of put any heed to that. So yes, as I said, obviously the costs were also. Yes.
Yes, obviously myself and Caroline went to that as the members, and I just would encourage all the members here to put themselves forward to do appeals. And actually, it demonstrated that we went against officers' recommendations, that because it was an unbalanced decision by the officers, the appeal inspector said that the committee members are entitled to make a different opinion and didn't make it wrong. So sometimes we do.
Yeah, no, it was very successful, I think, in that regard. And I think, as I said, that is the point. I mean, it came to committee and it was an unbalanced decision. You know, but we could all, you know, even as officers, recognise that was a large extension. You know, see, gone through pre-app with conservation officers and whatnot, and they did, you know. I'm sure you yourself will remember, as I said, they did very much make their point very well, I would say, you know, on the impacts there. But as I said, yes, you certainly are allowed to come to review it, and think particularly where there is that on balance judgment being made.
Well, thank you very much. I think today's been very interesting. We had a varied agenda and ready versions to add input into. I must thank our officers for all the hard work they do in preparing these reports, and it is a while before we get through it all and come to fruition. Anyway, the next date of the meeting is Tuesday the 12th of December, and all I need to do now is wish you a safe journey home, and thank you very much for your attendance today. Thank you.
Thank you very much.